Welcome in to Stacking the Box podcast with Matt Verderam and Sterling Holmes. I am Sterling Holmes. What a wild weekend of games. NFL playoffs, they are set. Verderam, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad that 18 teams are gone and out of the picture because now we can focus on the good ones. Although I do miss the Detroit Lions. I do miss them. I wish they were still playing. They're fun. They're different. But other than that, I'm glad teams that are just a complete waste of time are gone. So now we can focus in. We can hone in on the 6 games this weekend. There's only 13 football games left this year, and pretty much half of them going off between Saturday and Monday. So I'm excited. It's an interesting weekend of matchups. I think there are some games you'll look at and you're like, there's no way there's going to be an upset. And that always means that one of those games will be an upset. So I'm curious to see how it shakes.
Before we get into the slate of games, I just want to point out, since you mentioned Detroit, Dan Campbell's nose, that dude looked like he was getting frostbite. I felt bad. Like, someone go over there, tell him to put something on the dude's nose. It was almost as red, almost as the king himself, Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin always had the reddest nose. Dan Campbell tried giving him a run for his money.
Yeah. LaFleur also had an ear at one point that was redder than a fire truck. So tough night all the way around. A lot of cold, but listen, you know what? I'm fascinated to see how this is all going to play out. I mean, it would have been cool if the Lions were in, but I'm glad for Seattle fans. Seahawks, they win. They get a great show on Sunday night for them by Detroit to help take down the Packers. Look, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be a very, very interesting playoffs. I don't think there's any one team that everybody looks at and says that's a team to beat. There's probably about 5 teams that everybody thinks okay, they're the best teams. And then there's always some team that surprises you. So it'll be wide open this year in a way that maybe in some years it hasn't always been.
Well, let's take a look at Wild Card Weekend, starting with Saturday's slate of games. You mentioned Seattle. They get in with a win last week. And then the Detroit Lions took care of business over Green Bay. Seattle, 49ers in San Fran. What are you seeing here?
This is one of those games you have a hard time seeing an upset. I talked to Tyler Lockett yesterday for Stacking the Box, which will go up at some point during this week. And he mentioned it's a really hard place to play, great defense. He felt like their big key is being better in the red zone and getting 7s instead of some of the 3s they've gotten in the past. To me, that's a rough task for Seattle. Look, offensively, the Seahawks have some players. I mean, Lockett and DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker. And Geno's been a Pro Bowler this year. But, man, that's a tough team. That is a team you have to be able to do so much to stop them. I just wonder if Seattle can hold the Niners offense down enough to keep themselves in the game. Can they hold the Niners to 20 points? I don't know. It seems like a tall order. I know Purdy is a game manager at this point in his career, and that helps, but you're talking about Debo and Kittle and Ayuk and McCaffrey and Juszczyk. That is just, there's so much there. I think for Seattle to win that game, they're going to have to be fortunate. I mean, there's going to have to be a special team score, a pick 6, something that is out of the ordinary that gives Seattle a little bit of life. I think of all the games this week, and that's probably the game I look at and go, I just think very few paths to really see an upset.
When you start naming fullbacks, that's when you know a team is extremely deep offensively. Also, shout out to Gonzo the Beast. Happy birthday, man. Appreciate you always joining in, watching this show, and commenting. So happy birthday. Hopefully you have a great one. But I'm with you. And it's not just San Fran's offense and their weapons. It's the fact that they're so talented defensively as well. Charvarius Ward has had an incredible season at corner. That deal, the offseason long-term, highly paid contract that he received from San Fran, really paying off. He looks like a legitimate CB1. Whether you say it's scheme, whether you say it's him taking the next step, doesn't matter. He's been a bona fide stud for the 49ers. I will also point out San Fran is 8-1 at home. They don't lose at home. They haven't lost any time recently. This, I'm with you. If you're Seattle, this is beyond an uphill battle.
Yeah, look, it's just, Seattle's played them twice this year, and Seattle has scored 3 non-garbage time points on offense. Like 3. They scored 1 garbage time touchdown, and the other touchdown they ran back a block kick. I mean, that's it. Like, that's all they've done all year long. You are asking them to take on a team that I think, for my money, has the best roster in the NFL. I mean, they're loaded everywhere. They're loaded across the board. I think it's going to be very, very difficult. Seattle, by the way, 10-point underdog in the game.
Yeah.
It's just such an ask. And by the way, we're going to go a little bit longer on some of these games. It's going to be a little bit of a different format today. Ben Heisler, who has been with us all season long, who's done great work, has moved on from the company. And so we wish him all the best. And, of course, we miss Heisler tremendously. Man, he's not with us for the playoffs, which sucks. That being said, I am not going to pretend I'm a gambling expert. That seems like a surefire way to lose everybody money. So make sure you follow
can bet against me if you want to.
Right.
If you want to take what I say, then bet against it. You might do better.
Yeah, follow Heisler on Twitter at Benny Heis, BennyHeis, and he can give you all your betting and gambling tips. If I do that, everybody's in the poorhouse. So we'll mention the line. We'll talk about it a little bit, but for the love of God, don't take anything I say seriously on gambling. However, take what I say seriously on the game. I think with the line being 10, I think it's about right. Look, San Francisco, though, I will point out, has hammered Seattle by far more than 10 points in both games. So I think if you're the Seahawks, it's one of those things. You always hear people say it's hard to win 3 times against the same team. If you go back and look at history, more teams do it than not. So it's might be hard, but history says Seattle's got a pretty good climb ahead of it. I don't know that the Seahawks are talented enough. The only way for me that Seattle wins, other than just mayhem and they score a way or two that you don't expect, the one thing about the Niners defense, they're not great on the corners. That's probably the weak point. I mean, Travarius Ward's a good player. He's not a great player. They lost Emmanuel mostly for the year. Jason Verrett is, unfortunately, I think it's probably it for his career, all the injuries. Like Metcalf and Lockett could do some stuff against those corners, but can you protect long enough? I mean, you got rookie tackles for the Seahawks. Can you protect long enough against that front to do anything? That's good. If they can block and give Geno some time, there's a world where they can throw the ball some, but that's a big ask. That's a really big ask.
I do want to give a shout out to the Seattle Seahawks for just making it this far. You and myself went into the season saying they might have a bottom 5, bottom 3 roster.
No doubt.
Big shout out to Geno. Big shout out to Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll has done a phenomenal job there. And also some of their draft picks have hit. Trink Woolen looks like a lockdown corner that they got in the 5th round. So good for them. Let's get into the next game. This one I find very intriguing. The night game on Saturday night. The Chargers and the Jaguars. Jaguars making it in. Doug Peterson, good for him. I'm a massive Doug Peterson fan. I will always die on the hill. I thought he was unfairly fired in Philly, although I will say, hard to say they made the wrong decision, as Sirianni might win Coach of the Year, which we'll touch on a little bit later. And then the Chargers finally making it in. Justin Herbert, they went 10-7. They're getting a little healthy, although Mike Williams and Bosa both left a meaningless game in week 18. Because what was Brandon Staley doing? What do you take on here?
I'm not even going to get into the game for a second. That is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen a head coach do. Ever. That's not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. They lose this game this week. It's a borderline. Like it's a fireable offense. It is a fireable offense. And what he said after the game, it was fireable in the moment. That, well, we only have 48 players and it's hard to sit the starters. Are you kidding? Do you need like a first grade math lesson? Brendan, there's 11 guys on the field. Okay? 11 guys on each side of the ball. You have 48 guys. You also, by the way, could have called up some practice squad guys who are available to you at any time, and you could have made some of your starters inactive. What are you doing? Why? And you know what? I wouldn't have crushed them if they had played a series or two and somebody got hurt in like the first series. I still would have said, why are they playing in general? But okay, they played the whole game. They played the whole game, and they lost to Denver. It's one of the more inexplicable things, which leads me to, if you look at the line right now, the Chargers, who opened as a 3-point favorite, are now a 1-point favorite. Can anyone explain to me why that team's a favorite in this game? Why are they a favorite? The refrain, I'm sure, from Chargers world would be, well, hey, they're more talented. Okay, sure. They're more talented. They don't have a coach. They don't have a coach on the team. The Chargers, would you like to take a guess at how many teams they've beaten this year that are in the playoffs?
2.
1. They've beaten the Dolphins, who stink. Okay, that's the only team they've beaten all year long. They played the Chiefs twice, lost to them both times. Didn't play the Bengals, didn't play the Bills, didn't play the Ravens. Okay, beat the Dolphins, got pummeled by Jacksonville in week 3, 38-10. And on the NFC side, they played the Niners, they got beat. They played Seattle, they got killed. That's it for them. That's their whole, the only team with a winning record they've beaten this year is Miami. That is it. Every other time they've played somebody with a winning record, they've gotten their doors blown off. Jacksonville, to me, is a better coach team, is right now the hotter team. They've won 5 in a row. ETN's going to rush for about 170 yards in this game. I mean, Denver, who can't move the ball against anybody, had almost 500 yards of offense. I understand Herbert's terrific and all that. That's fine and well. Herbert, as good as if they don't have Williams in this game, they're a hell of a lot easier to deal with. You just double Allen on any big down and go, okay, beat us. I actually think Jacksonville matches up well in this game. They have a short passing attack that's going to limit Bosa and Mack. I think Jacksonville should be favored in this, especially at home. They have an extra day of rest, by the way, in this game. And they're at home. And the Chargers, it's not like it's a hop, skip, and a jump here. I mean, they've got to go all the way across the continental United States. I think this sets up really well for Jacksonville.
I hear what you're saying. I agree with
vehemently.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I will do what you said earlier, what that Chargers fans would say. I'm not a Chargers fan. The Chargers are more talented.
They're more talented.
They're more talented, and they're getting healthier outside of this previous last game. Bosa should be back. Bosa seems like it was precautionary, right? Williams is an actual concern, but Keenan Allen's healthy. Justin Herbert's healthy. Austin Eckler is a game changer. The Chargers have finally started getting some of their elite guys back and healthy. I like the Chargers in this game. I don't think Jacksonville's ready. They're a good story. They're fun. I told you how much I like Doug Peterson. I think he's a much better coach than Staley. I think he's a much better coach. But I think Justin Herbert is much more talented, at least at this point in their careers, than Trevor Lawrence. I just think at talent level, there's too much to overcome for Jacksonville. I understand the first matchup, but let's be real here. The Chargers were missing everyone, and the playoffs are a different story. I think it's a close game, but I would for sure go with the Chargers in my estimation.
I look forward to this being a game where everything you said is right. I look forward to this being a game where you're watching it and you're like, wow, the Chargers just did 6 unbelievably damaging things to themselves for no reason at all, because that's 100% how this game's playing out. I look for just a killer delay of game, like just absolutely no idea what's happening. Like somebody just blows a coverage. I look forward to, it's Staley early in the game having a 4th and 6 at his own 28-yard line, being like, I don't care. We're going for it. And then running like a screen that gets thrown for 4-yard line. Like it's just, this is going to be the game where Herbert throws nothing over like 8 yards in the air because nothing's designed to go past the sticks. Because Joe Lombardi coaches like he's absolutely terrified of letting Justin Herbert throw the football. I just see this being that quintessential, like, yep, they're really talented. And oh, look at that. Like, they're kind of like, they remind me in a lot of ways of the Texans under Bill O'Brien. Where you look at them and go, man, Sean Watson, and J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, and Whitney Merciless, and DeAndre Hopkins, and Dwayne Brown, and on down the line, And then you'd watch them, and you're like, they're not that good. I don't know why. Like, they're just not like they should be. They've got like 4 of the best 5 players on the field, but they're not that good. Like, it's like when the Bills, and now people will remember this differently because of the way history's played out. But like It was the year the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. And everybody will remember that Houston game against Kansas City, which I won't even look. I mean, 24-0. It's embarrassing to lose a game the way they lost. But like, fair enough. They lost to a much better team. Fine. What I always think about that team is the week prior when they were at home against the Bills, who were not by any means the Bills that they currently are. Josh Allen was still kind of a young mess at the time. They did not have Stephon Diggs. Like, that team was a train wreck. Okay. And it snuck into the playoffs with a miracle. And you watch that game, and it took everything Houston had to beat them. Like, every possible, like, they got down. It was a train wreck. Like, it was just, and if the Bills don't get a bad call against them and then they just blow the game late, they win. That is what that team reminds me of. Like, I am waiting to turn on this game and for everybody to be like, the Chargers is much more talented, which they are. And then you watch the game, you're like, man, can't believe the Chargers threw 3 picks in the first quarter. Like, you can't, just ran the wrong route twice and fumbled the ball and forgot to put a return man back for the kickoff. Like, just all kinds of shit that by the end of the game, you're like, oh, right. They're the Chargers. Of course they lost this game. That's who they are.
So what bet are we going to do? What are we putting down on this? You and me. I'll take the Chargers. You get the Jags. What are we doing?
I don't know. Whoever's wrong just has to get up here and admit they're a moron next week. That, you know, just like do it like almost like a statement form, like a mea culpa.
All right, I'm writing it down.
Okay.
Chargers, me, Jags, Verderam.
Yeah.
Okay. Or shotgun a beer. That'd be a good one too.
You're gonna feel immediate regret when the third play of the game is like 3rd and 8, and Herbert just throws a ball 5 yards shy of the sticks for reasons no one can. By the way, I unearthed this the other day. Not that, you know, it's great investigative journalism or anything, but I was sitting there thinking about it because Eckler this year for the Chargers. Then we'll move on to the next games. We'll move on to Sunday's games. But I have to say this stat. It's incredible. So Eckler, let me just pull this up on Twitter. He had over 100 catches this year. He had 107. Okay. Which is, you know, for a running back, I mean, for a receiver, it's incredible. For a running back, it's damn near unheard of. So he had 107 receptions. In NFL history, of any player with that many catches or more in a season, only Jarvis Landry had previously failed to amass 1,000 yards. He had 987. Eckler had 722 yards. That's impossible. That is impossible. That's 6 yards a catch. Like, that's literally if the man went 3 yards and fell over face first, and that was it. Like, I am continuously floored by that number. That is impossible. You'd think just once, swing it out to him in like a 30-yard gain, right? Like, nope, not them. Man, I'm not kidding. I saw that stat, and it sent me down a rabbit hole. I'm like, I have to know. I have to know. Like, has this ever happened before? It's not even close. Like, Eckler's longest catch this year, mind you, on 107 receptions is 23 yards. It's impossible. Like, it's really one of the great numbers of all time. In his entire season with 107 receptions, he has 4 catches over 20 yards.
And he's a great receiver too. So
it's incredible. Like,
but they only use him.
It's unreal. Like, it's genuinely one of the wildest stats I've ever seen.
It's like Joe Lombardi thinks they have Matt Schaub when he's 38 years old, right, and I don't know, Jackie Battle as your running back in this situation.
I mean, so he had 4 what you'd call explosive plays all year of 20 yards or more on 107 receptions. Like, to put that into context, like, McCole Hardman had 25 catches all year. He has 5 explosive plays. Justin Watson has 6. Like, I know he's a receiver, but I mean, Jesus, 107 catches. It's just mind blown, man. Mind just on the wall. All right, let's move on.
I'm already nervous that I took the Chargers in this one. Dolphins and Bills game in Buffalo. Dolphins looking like they'll probably go with Teddy Bridgewater as the starter. What are you thinking here? Is Buffalo going to continuously ride high with all the good news surrounding Damar Hamlin? Obviously, great for him. He's now back in Buffalo.
Yeah,
Just
awesome.
an incredible story. But it felt like you felt some of the energy of Damar Hamlin's storyline with Buffalo, even two or kick returns for a touchdown from
Yeah.
Nyheim Hines. I mean, it was incredible.
One of the coolest moments you'll ever see, Nyheim Hines running that opening kickoff. I mean, that was just unbelievable. So I guess my feeling, and this is the hardest game for me to analyze, although we'll get to the other one in a second. Not because I don't know if the Bills are better. I mean, the Bills are the better team. But I don't know who the quarterback is for Miami. Like, if it's Skylar Thompson, the line could be 30. It wouldn't be high enough. Okay. If it's Bridgewater, the line, by the way, is 10.5 at the moment. If it's Bridgewater, the Bills should definitely win the game. But, like, Bridgewater's an actual NFL quarterback. Like, he could throw the ball some. They could stay in the game a little bit. He's been in the playoffs. Like, I could see a scenario where the Dolphins give a respectable effort with Teddy Bridgewater. If Tua plays, I'm not even saying this to be funny. I mean, I'm dead serious. Like, I'm like horrified for the young man. I really am if he plays. But beyond the concussion stuff, like, he gives them a real shot to win the game. Do I think they'd win with any of those three guys? No. Like, I'd pick Buffalo. But I think if Teddy plays, there's like a decent chance Miami's at least in the game for a while. And if Tua plays, they could potentially even, keep it really interesting. I think right now, though, the story for me is more about Buffalo's defense. I don't know if you watched that Bills-Pats game. The Pats had no problem just throwing the ball all over Buffalo. And before Hamlin got hurt, and it was very early in the game, Cincinnati had no problem doing it either. I mean, Cincinnati was just carving them up and down the field. This has been a problem now for Buffalo for a while. Like, they are not getting anywhere near the pressure they were getting when Von Miller was healthy. Tre'Davious White is back from his torn ACL, and he's been okay, but he's not been Tre'Davious White, which I think is to be expected. He missed the whole year. Kyer Elam is a rookie. Like, the athleticism's there, but the results haven't been there yet. They have problems against the pass. Well, that's a major problem in the playoffs. I mean, when you get now, look, against Miami, Hill and Waddle are no joke, but I don't know if they've got the quarterback to do it. But you're gonna have a problem if you face Cincinnati or Kansas City right now with the way Buffalo's defense is played. They've been better against the run, but you think the Chiefs care if they can stop the run, or the Bengals care? Like, they'll just throw it. That to me is the question here. But in this game, I have a really hard time seeing Miami going up there and winning. I don't think Miami can stop them, and I don't think Miami's got a healthy enough quarterback to go take care of business.
You're basically just hoping that Tyreek Hill and Waddle go off no matter who the quarterback is.
Take a slant.
Busted play here. Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill, give him a shout out, had a great season. I mean, over 1,700 yards receiving. Dude's had a incredible performance down there in Miami, but I just don't think they have the weapons. And also, we're talking about how poor the Bills' defense is. Miami's is pretty bad as well. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, the entire offense for the Buffalo Bills should have no problem going through this Miami Dolphins defense. I like Buffalo no matter who starts for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Look, I think the Bills are going to get into the 30s in this game, and I don't think Miami's doing that. So, listen, Miami, if you're a Dolphins fan, it's been disappointing from the sense you went from 8-3 to 9-8 and struggling to get in. But you know what? It's been a year where I think everything just kind of hinges moving forward on Tua's health. Like, if Tua's healthy, team's pretty good. It's got to get better. I'm not saying they're going to go out and win the Super Bowl, but like it's at least a step in the right direction, a couple steps in the right direction. If he's not healthy, then I don't know where they go with this. Then you start talking about, okay, now you got to go get, does Tom Brady go there? They lost first round pick trying to get Tom Brady to go there. What about Derek Carr? What about if Lamar Jackson becomes available? We're going to get to Lamar here in a second. But I think for the Dolphins, look, it's been a very good year. It's been a tough year at times. But they're back in the playoffs. And you know what? I'll say this. It is a divisional game. Divisional games have a tendency to be weird games. You know each other really well. You're not intimidated by the other team. Miami won't be in awe of Buffalo. They see them all the time. And they beat them once this year. So that is the one thing with this weekend. There's a lot of divisional matchups. Those games have a tendency to be closer than you expect. They just do. Those games are always bizarre.
How much do you believe in Mike McDaniel? Before we move on, do you think he's the right guy for the Miami Dolphins?
I don't know yet. I like him, but the media has this thing we're all guilty of like, if the media likes a person on a personal level, then it's like everybody rushes to defend them or rushes to, like, anoint the guy. We saw it with Brendan Staley last year. Why? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure with Mike McDaniel yet. He's shown that he can draw some things up on offense that are interesting. The defense was terrible. And offensively, by the way, I think as the year went on, teams started to take away the middle of the field and said, all right, beat us throwing outside the numbers. They couldn't do it. Now, is that on McDaniel or is that on the quarterbacks? That's a fair question. But I don't know yet. I think he's promising. I think he's a promising coach. If I'm a Miami fan, I'm happy with his first year as head coach.
Yeah. By the way, Armed Ape in the chat, you are a Dolphins fan. Thank you for listening to what we do here.
Right.
We'll root for you. We'll be happy for the Dolphins for you. There we go. Let's get into the next game, 3:30 on Sunday. Giants, Vikings. Vikings 13-4, but they have it's a
11-0 in one-score games.
Yeah, an imposter 13-4. They know how to win in close games. Come on. It can be either or. Kirk Cousins, though, this game's not at noon. That makes me nervous. The Giants, they've done a great job with winning with what they have. Their wide receivers have not been good all season long. When Kenny Golladay is getting legitimate snaps in the year 2023, that's an issue. Saquon Barkley looks back to normal. Danny Dimes occasionally looks like he's the right guy for the job, and occasionally he looks like he has no idea what he's doing. What do you make of this game? This has the makings, in my opinion, of an all-time classic. What the bleep just happened?
Yeah, I look forward to this game being one of those games where anything on earth is possible. If you told me that one of these teams won by 30 points, I'd believe it if you told me that either of the teams are the ones who did it. If you said to me that somebody lost this game missing a 20-yard field goal, I could also believe that. Although I would pick that to be the Vikings. Gano's actually a good kicker. But I got to tell you, the Vikings, it feels like one of these things all year the Vikings have lived right with this stuff. All year long. I mean, one game after the next. And I've detailed it multiple times writing it. Like, they've been incredible in the fourth quarter of close games. Incredible. Like, their point differentials through the roof, and every other scenario, they're atrocious. Like, I don't know what to make of it, but there's just a part of me that says the Giants lost on a 61-yard field goal when they played them a month ago in Minnesota. The Giants lost that game because they turned the ball over a few times. Because other than that, they took it to the Vikings. Jones had a huge day. Barkley had a big day. Like, I know this is kind of a trendy pick. I get it. I like the Giants, man. Like, I just do. I think they're well coached. I think Jones is taking care of the ball this year. And one thing I do believe, I believe if there's not a massive advantage at quarterback, which I think there's an advantage for Minnesota here, but I don't think it's massive. When you have a defense as bad as Minnesota's, and they are horrific, I tend to think that is going to be your undoing. Like, you're going to have to get off the field at some point. And the Giants don't have a great defense, but they've got at least a respectable defense. The Vikings are atrocious. Like, the Vikings are going to turn Richie James into James Lofton this weekend. I like the Giants. I like the Giants to pull it out. I like the fact that even though they played all their backups, they played their asses off against the Eagles. Like, that to me that shows that's a culture thing. They could have just laid down. Nobody would have cared if they lost 49-3, but they didn't. They played hard. I think that says something about where the Giants are going.
I do like Richie James. Thank you for carrying me to the fantasy football playoffs in a 12-team PPR league. Thank you, Richie James. I will also like to point out Brian Daboll, like you mentioned, has done a great job for the Giants. I just like the Vikings in this one. I've been a Vikings supporter the majority of this season. I understand they have outperformed all of the analytical numbers. I get it. But I do think there's something to them winning these close games. 11-0, that's absurd, right? Eventually, it's gonna turn. No one's that lucky, but I do think there's something to knowing how to win in a one-score game. There's something to knowing how to win when the game is close. I like Kirk Cousins over, Danny Dimes. Dalvin Cook is obviously very talented, and Justin Jefferson. he's a game changer. We saw him take over a game. There's not many wide receivers that can legitimately take over a game. He is one of them. The addition of TJ Hawkinson is a nice one. Adam Thielen, while he's not what he once was, is still a massive red zone threat. I like the offense of Minnesota more than the Giants. I think it's going to be a relatively high scoring game, and that leads me to believe Minnesota winning another one-score game.
I mean, oh, they could. To me, of all the NFC games, that's the game I probably the least conviction in. Like, it's just, I just want to sit down and watch that game and just watch the absolute chaos. Like, that game is good. If you said to me, like, which of these 6 games has the biggest potential for just manic chaos in the last 2 minutes of the game, it's not even a question. Like, Minnesota frantically trying to get down the field, like after they've given up like an 80-yard swing pass to Saquon. I'm just, that of all of them is the game that I look at and I'm like, oh, 100%. 100%. That's going to be something that they do. But I'll say this, it's intriguing. It's an interesting game. Like, I don't think either team is a Super Bowl team, but it's an interesting football game.
Yeah. Let's get into the Sunday night game. Ravens, Bengals, another divisional matchup. Bengals 12-4. They seem to be pissed off with how the playoff seeding in situation, the scenarios played out for them. They are not happy. The Ravens, who's going to be the quarterback? Is it Tyler Huntley? Is it going to be Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson, it's a little interesting because he's had, 5 weeks now for a MCL strain. So I know he's come out and basically said he doesn't want to wear a brace. That's part of the reason why. But there's a little interesting situation going on with Lamar Jackson because he wants to get paid. He has no long-term security. He doesn't want something worse to happen to his leg. He's sitting here going, well, if you're not going to pay me, why am I putting my career on the line? So this is a very intriguing game, but I'm going with the Bengals no matter who starts for the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. So this game to me, we talked about we're going to get to Lamar here in a second. If he doesn't play in this game, the questions coming into the offseason for Baltimore are going to be ridiculous. First of all, let me just be clear. If he doesn't play in this game, the Baltimore offseason will be starting this weekend. Okay. They're not winning this game with Tyler Huntley. If he plays, I still would pick Cincinnati, but that becomes a really interesting game. It's a divisional game. Again, they're weird. And Baltimore's got real guys on defense at every level. Like Humphrey and Peters on the edge, on the perimeter. You got Houston and Calais Campbell up front. You got Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith at the second level. That's a lot of guys. Like that's a group that can play defense, and that team is very well coached. Okay, Harbaugh is one of the best 5 coaches in the NFL. But I think if Jackson does not play, especially considering it was widely reported, like he'll be back by Christmas Eve, and then he wasn't. And then he wasn't back the following week or the following week. And you have no idea if he's going to practice. Like, we're going to find out here. I mean, we're recording this, obviously, like we always do on Tuesday. Their first week practice will be Wednesday. Like, if he doesn't play in this game, you are going to have people, right or wrong, who question whether or not he could have played, whether or not he should have played. There's going to be some people who say even if he could have played, he's got every right to sit out. I will tell you this. I do not know if he can play or not. I don't know. I am not, however, in the camp. If he can play, then I think he needs to go out there and play football. You made a commitment to your team. You know what? You could have held out at the beginning of the year. You could have said, look, I'm not playing until I get paid. None of that happened. He's not on the tag right now. It's not like one of these things where July 15th was the deadline. Okay. If he didn't want to play under his current deal, that I'm fine with. But once you show up and you're there and you're playing, I don't think it's all right now all of a sudden to just go, oh, I'm good. Now, I get it. You don't want to risk a big injury, but you know what? You risk that every time you step on the field. And he knew that going into the season. Now, he may very well just not be healthy enough to play. And if that's the case, then I don't blame him one iota for saying, hey, look, I'm not playing. I'm not going to go out there on 70% of a knee. That's fine. I mean, that's a smart move if you're him. So, but, I think it's irresponsible what'll probably end up happening, which will be these people with rampant I'm sure he could have played. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. If he doesn't play, they're going to lose. And then you're going to go into an offseason where I got to tell you, if you're the Ravens, I think you come down on this whole thing in one way. You make one last big offer. You say, look, here's our best offer. Take it or leave it. And if he leaves it, I think you start looking to trade him. Because at some point here, he's been hurt each of the last 2 years. They've not advanced. Like, am I looking to pay him $250 million guaranteed? And I know that's what quarterbacks are going to want because of the Watson deal. I am not negotiating off of the Cleveland Browns. I'm not doing that. I'd be out of business in an hour. Okay. I'm not going to sit there and go, well, the Browns did it. Like, no. Okay. Like, I think a lot of Lamar Jackson, I would not guarantee him $250 million. And so if you're not going to do that and he's going to hold out for it, I'd start shopping. And if there's a team out there who says, we'll give him $250 million, that'd be great. Give me 3 first-round picks. And I would move forward. I mean, I think if you're the Ravens, you try to keep him. I'd try to keep him. I'd make him a big offer. But at some point, if he's not going to take it unless it's fully guaranteed, then I'd shop him.
Yeah. I will also say a lot of the guys you mentioned defensively for the Ravens, they're not getting any younger. Calais Campbell, Justin Houston, those dudes are obviously up there in age. I will say what Lamar Jackson has done is a very interesting case study to see how he gets paid. The injuries are there. The MVP is there. The playoff success is not there. And some of the concerns surrounding him heading into the season, AKA what can he do throwing the ball outside of the numbers? Those questions are still out there. Part of that is he's throwing to dudes that were Chiefs send-offs and Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson. Obviously, Mark Andrews is a very good tight end, but you need some other weapons. Even Hollywood Brown said no, and he went down to Arizona. Very interesting situation going on. Let's get into the Monday night game. Cowboys, Buccaneers, Tom Brady at home in the playoffs. The 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting a 12-win Cowboys team. What do you see happening?
I'll tell you right now, Mike McCarthy likes his job. You better win this game. You better win this game.
You think he's getting canned if he loses?
Yep. I do. Yep. Well, here's why. If they lose, they're losing on an 8-9 football team. And it's every excuse Jerry Jones needs to say, we're not making progress. We've lost 2 years in a row in this round. And I would like to search for a new coach. And let me tell you, before that sentence gets out of his mouth, Sean Payton will be in Dallas. Okay, that's why. Sean Payton is flirting with the Broncos right now. I'd be willing to guess, I guess would be the right, make a sizable guess. He knows that the Waltons who own the Broncos, or the Walmart Waltons, okay, they have more money than God. And they're going to have to offer him more money than God to go there. And he's going to take that offer and he's going to shop it to every other team that he's interested in and say, all right, they're going to pay me $12 a year. Match it. And Jerry is going to go, awesome. Here you go. Here's $12 million a year. Like, Jerry Jones and Sean Payton are extraordinarily close. Extraordinarily close. Payton was an assistant coach, for those who don't know, in Dallas before he took the job in New Orleans. They've remained very, very tight in the years since. Like, to the point that if they go out to an NFL event, they almost always will grab each other, say hi, have dinner. Like, they're very close. If Mike McCarthy, if they lose this game, I think Mike McCarthy will lose his job. And I think that's going to happen because Dak can't stop throwing picks. The Cowboys have been terrible for a month. The Buccaneers are not good. But if there's one thing I'm not betting against is Brady in a playoff game. I could see this being a game where it's like that Captain Phillips thing. Like, I'm the captain now, where Brady goes to the sideline after like the 4th run call from Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich. It's like, you know what? I'm calling the game. You just take your headsets off, just sit here and watch the game. Like, I'm calling it. I don't care. You deal with the defense. I could just see him. I think that's kind of what happened against Carolina when they fell behind 14-0. And he was like, fuck this. Just give me the football. I'm done with this. Like, we're not running the ball anymore. I have a feeling you're going to see in this game them just throw it and throw it and throw it and throw it. Now look, there is a risk in that. I'm not blind to that. Dallas is a great pass rush. Cowboys line can get home in a hurry, and the Bucs line's not great. But Brady's not dumb. He's been in this league a while, and I could see them just pick all the way down the field, just 6-7 yards at a time. Dak throws a pick or two, And before you know it, you're like, wow, Dallas took 14 penalties, huh? Look at I am not picking the Cowboys over Brady. I will admit, if the Cowboys play well, they will kill Tampa.
Yeah.
They will. I'm not in any delusion about that. But this is the classic game with that. This is kind of like my NFC version of the Chargers game. If there's ever a game you just look at and go, I know that a lot of this stuff lines up the other way, but that guy's on that team, and that team will make every mistake imaginable to lose this game. Like, give me Brady. Give me Brady. I don't think Tampa goes further than this, but give me Brady.
I'll touch on the head coach openings in a little bit because I want to pose a question to you. So I won't touch on Mike McCarthy, although I think his job is more safe than obviously you do, but that's a little agree to disagree there. I think what he's done with Cooper Rush, getting a 12-win team with 6 games at a Cooper Rush.
Jerry's not hiring one of his best friends because of Cooper Rush's maturation.
No. But the fact that they were able to win 12 games starting Cooper Rush 6 times is very impressive. But I'm with you. I think the Buccaneers win, and this is my upset to watch. It's wild because for me, everything screams Dallas is the better team for every single reason. The Buccaneers were not a good team. Like no reason outside of Tom Brady, and the reason why Tom Brady, he gets the ball out quicker than almost any other quarterback in the NFL. So you, to an extent, neutralize the great pass rush of Dallas. Trayvon Diggs is an aggressive corner. He's a good corner. He's actually had a much better season overall this year than last year, even though the interception numbers aren't there. But you're telling me they're not going to get him once or twice? The veteran Tom Brady getting the aggressive corner? I could see that happening. Tom Brady still has good weapons. Offensive line is not what it once was, but could you not see a couple of quick screen passes to White, to Leonard Fournette when Dallas is sitting in the house? I could. I think Tampa wins this game. And I think we're going to see the Dallas Cowboys go home again in the first round.
Boy, if that happens, there's going to be a lot of chaos. All right, we got to move into the future here, but let's just recap quickly. So who do you have winning this weekend? Who are the 6 teams?
So the 6 teams I have are 49ers, the Chargers, and you have the Jags, Bills, Vikings, Bengals, and Buccaneers.
So we are different on Jags, Chargers, and Vikings, Giants.
Yeah. I have 5 home teams winning, 1 road team winning.
Okay. So I think the only road team I have winning, the Giants. So, Jacksonville's at home. So, I look forward to the game where both of us are wrong because it might be Tampa, but wouldn't it just be the most fitting thing at the NFL? It's like Buffalo. Like Skylar Thompson goes in there, and it's just like, what the hell is that? You know what's crazy about games like that? And by the way, that won't happen. But you know what's crazy about games like that? Is it's funny how in the playoffs, the pressure and the tension is palpable in a situation like that. Like the Chiefs were 2 touchdown favorites last year against Pittsburgh. And everybody in the world is like, oh my God, Chiefs going to win this game going away. And the Chiefs then fumbled the ball. And Pittsburgh ran in for a touchdown. And everybody in Arrowhead just clenched to the nth degree. Like, oh, my God, this is how it happens. And then the Chiefs, to their credit, just immediately blew the doors off Pittsburgh, and that was it. But I will say, if that game had happened before the Chiefs won a Super Bowl, the anxiety level in that stadium would have just been through the roof. That is one thing I am interested about with Buffalo this year. They are the team that everybody thought going into the year. They were the consensus Super Bowl pick. I mean, I picked them. Everybody picked them to go to the Super Bowl. Everybody picked them to go to and win the Super Bowl. If they ever fall behind Miami and it's like 14-10 at halftime, the anxiety at that stadium is going to be, you're going to feel it across the country through the television screen. It's once you've won a Super Bowl, it's different. Then there's that belief of like, hey, these guys have been here. They'll figure it out. Buffalo has had a tortured history. Like I think even with Cincinnati, it's a little different. They've gotten the Super Bowl. They went into Arrowhead. They won. Like Buffalo is that team I'm watching. And by the way, Minnesota is absolutely, even though Minnesota was not expected to be this good, like if Minnesota falls behind 3-0, the fear is going to just be unbelievable. Those are the two stadiums that I'm watching. Like, if one of those teams falls behind, obviously, I think the Giants are going to win. So I think the Giants are much more likely to do this than the Dolphins. But if one of those teams that's favored gets behind early, and it's like, wow, that team's actually playing well. In the regular season, you don't have that because it's like, well, listen, I don't think they're going to get upset. But if they do, it's not that big of a deal. All of a sudden, your insides just start to turn. Like, you're like, oh my God, are you like? That's when, and then if Buffalo's behind 14-10 and Allen misses like a deep shot that he should have hit, like everybody in the stadium is gonna be, oh my God. Like, so that there's a lot of that. There's this weekend, one home team that's supposed to win. Like Jacksonville, it's kind of house money. I think that's fair to say. Even maybe at this point with Tampa, there's going to be a home team this weekend that is absolutely supposed to win its game. And it's like tied or behind going into the fourth quarter. That's nut crunching time. Those are the games you're like, oh my God. That's when they show the crowd and nobody's drinking anymore because they're too scared to drink. Like, it's just like they're just staring out at the field like it's a hellscape. Like that's when you know it's playoff football.
Just staring into the abyss as K-State legend Skylar Thompson rumbles and tumbles for a 60-yard touchdown. Let's get into the future. Will the Bears keep or trade their first overall draft pick?
There's been a lot of talk about what they're going to do already. And a lot of people are like, should they trade Justin Fields? Like, I will happily go on record. If I'm wrong with this, fine, eat me alive. If the Bears trade Justin Fields, everybody involved should be removed from their job. I've seen a multitude of people who are like former GMs on TV who are like, I'll tell you what I would do. And it's like, you're a former GM for a reason. You know what? Like, you know more about football than I do. I'll be the first to admit that. But you're a former GM. And it's probably not because you quit. Why would you give up on Justin Fields, who has shown immense talent? For what? So you could draft Bryce Young. You don't know if Bryce Young's going to be any good. And for the next person who's like, he's going to be a number one overall pick. So is Sam Bradford. How'd that turn out? I mean, so is Jameis.
But let me point this out. The thing with Justin Fields, I'm not disagreeing. We've seen immense progress from Justin Fields, but the same questions we had with Lamar Jackson are coming up with Justin Fields. We know the legs are incredible. We're not disagreeing there, but what have we seen from the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL? Have we seen injuries or not? Yeah, we've seen that.
Sure.
So if you, my point to you is, if you think that Bryce Young has any chance of being better than Justin Fields, if you legitimately think in 5 years' time, Bryce Young is better than Justin Fields or CJ Stroud, just either take your pick.
Sure.
If you think either of those guys are better in 5 years, you take the quarterback. It's the most important position in the NFL. If you see all of a sudden CJ Stroud crushing it in Houston and you're still having question marks about Justin Fields, you're going to be looking like the biggest buffoon out there.
You know what? I disagree. Here's one thing, though. Justin Fields is 6'3", 228. You know how big Bryce Young is? He's 5'10", $193.
Sure.
I'm not taking him number one. Are you kidding me? For size alone, I'd be terrified. Now, if I needed a quarterback, that's different, okay? I'm not saying I wouldn't take him if I needed a quarterback. If I need a quarterback, absolutely. I take that risk. He's tiny. Like, the idea that they're going to move off Justin Fields for injury concerns to go take a guy who's 5'10" and $195, I can't get behind. Now, if you're Houston,
works for Seattle.
It works for Seattle. They took him in the third round.
It worked for Drew Brees in the.
They took him in the Chargers took him in the second round. It's a lot less of an investment. Wilson was a third round pick, a lot less of an investment. You're taking a flyer at that point. The number one overall pick, the only comp is Kyler. That's the comp. How's that going? I mean, he's been fine, but I don't think you'd be like, oh my God, we got to trade Fields away. Okay, like I would be now. No, and by the way, Jay Ward says Bryce Young is 6 feet. Let me tell you right now, Bryce Young, you better believe he's going to be 6 feet at the combine. Okay, that man's going to wear 12 pairs of socks. He is listed. I just looked it up. From where I saw, he's 5'10". Now you want to play semantics? 5'10", 6 foot. I don't give a damn. He's not 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". I mean, he's not a bigger guy.
I'm
He's very
5'10", and I would not do well in the NFL.
I mean, I'm 6'2", and I probably wouldn't do well. I mean, I'm guessing that's a concern. But here's my other point with this. If you're the Bears, you can here's door one, door two. You can draft a quarterback and trade Fields, okay? And you get a haul for him. I'm sure you get a haul for him. Or you can, I guess there's three doors. Or you can just keep the pick and draft whoever you'd like, okay, which I'm assuming would be a defensive player for them if it's a non-quarterback. Door number three, which is the door I would take, I would trade out of that pick, and I would say, based on what has happened in recent years, Goff, Wentz, there's another, like I'm blanking big time. Trey Lance. Those are all quarterbacks the team's traded up for. The price is 3 firsts. And if I'm the Bears, and I can have Justin Fields, $118 million in cap space, which is what they're projected to have, and on top of that, I have 3 extra first-round picks, I'm doing that. That's what I'm doing. Like, I think Fields is really good. I got to tell you, I think Fields is going to be a better thrower of the football than Lamar Jackson. I do. They have nobody around that kid. And he went out and he was terrific. I just can't, man, there's no way. Like, because here's the other side of that. Can you imagine if they trade him and he goes on and has an unbelievable career and they draft Bryce Young, and Bryce Young, whether it's because he gets hurt or he's just ineffective, you have the quarterback. And then you're like, well, we're going to move you. Do you watch Family Guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, of course. I figured. Look, it's like that episode of Family Guy where Peter goes on that game show and they're like, you could have this boat or you could have what's behind this door. And like Peter, it takes the door and it's bullshit. It's like, you don't know what Bryce Young's going to be. He could be great. He could be PJ Losman. You don't know. Like, or JP Losman. JP Losman. You don't know. I would trade the pick. I'd take all those extra picks with Justin Fields and 100+ in cap and go, let me go with God. I can build a football team. I want the man I know, not the man I don't. And I know what Justin Fields is.
Yeah, you have a boat. What could be out behind the door? It could even be a boat. Yeah, you take the boat. You take what's there. I get you. I'm not saying I don't believe in Justin Fields. I'm not saying that. I just wanted to pose the other side of the equation here.
That's fine.
I would 1,000% do what you would do. I'm just saying, if you are the GM and you do think that Bryce Young is that much better than Fields, I would take the quarterback. I think it's a sunk cost that you've already had Fields. I don't think that you're tied or married to him, but I'm with you. I would trade the number 1 pick. You got to give a chance to Fields because I think he has grown. I do think he will have a better arm than Lamar Jackson. I just think that if you are the GM and you do think that the other way is better, don't let this stop you. Let's get into the future number 2. What are the best and worst head coach openings?
All right, so I'll be succinct with this. I think the worst head coach opening is Denver. Arizona's got a case for it. Indianapolis has a case for it, but Indy's not tied long-term to a quarterback. And Arizona, I still think, at least with Kyler, he can play at a decent level. I don't know that he's not a headache at times, but he can play at a decent level. Russell Wilson might be completely and utterly cooked. And if that's the case, you're screwed. I don't care who you are, who's going in there. And on top of that, Denver doesn't have all of its draft picks. So for me, Denver's the worst job. Although, again, you could make the case with Arizona because Denver has a ton of money in terms of just liquid cash to spend with the Waltons. The Cardinals won't spend that kind of money. The best job, I think, is Carolina. Like, you got a lot of draft picks from that McCaffrey deal. You have all your own picks. You've got a lot of young talent on that team. Tepper's got a ton of money as an owner. I love the Carolina job. Matthew S. is asking, why is the worst not Houston? Houston is fascinating to me. You could easily make the case, like, the Houston job's a train wreck. I mean, they're about to have their 4th coach in 4 years. McNair and Casario, not exactly the brain trust that you believe in. But they have a ton of space in them, and they're going to get a quarterback here at the top. They get the number 2 overall pick. You could make a case that that's either a good job or a bad job, depending on your perspective. I can't make a good case for Arizona or for Denver. I could make the case Carolina's a great job. I think Carolina's a job I would take if I had my pick of the litter.
I think Denver and Arizona are both tied for the worst for different reasons. I almost would say Arizona's the worst job. The reason why you might say Denver's not quite as bad, here's why. You're going to get paid. You'll get more money going to Denver than you would Arizona. That's the only reason why I would say Denver.
No doubt. No doubt. My God, you might get 10x.
That's the only reason why I would say Arizona's a worse job. Strictly because you're getting paid less going to Arizona than you would going to Denver. I think the best job, and the reason why I didn't say Panthers, by the way, I like your argument. I think Steve Wilkes gets that job. I think it's already done.
He better
not necessarily done.
He should.
But I think Steve Wilkes,
that job.
And you see me wearing Mizzou stuff. He was an absolute unmitigated dumpster fire as the defensive coordinator for Mizzou. He was horrendous, but I love seeing him get a second chance. Obviously, what he did at Arizona was a dumpster fire, but what he's done now with Carolina, he deserves that second or third chance, however you want to look at it. He has that job in my mind.
Like he never had any shot at Arizona. He had Josh Rosen for 1 year. What the hell was he supposed to do that season? I always think, like, look, I'm not a big, like, give the interim guy the head coach title a lot. I think sometimes that's kind of a fallacy. That team played its ass off for that guy all year long. Like, that to me says a lot about how they feel about him. And, sometimes, like, you look at the Raiders. Would they have been better off keeping Rich Bisaccia? I posit to say yes, they would have been better off. So, sometimes, again, man you know against a man you don't. Like, the Raiders love Bisaccia, and Mark Davis was like, I don't care. Josh McDaniels, 6-11. Congratulations.
I think the best is either Indy, because I think you might make the playoffs because they're going to go out and they'll probably do what they've done the past few seasons, get a veteran quarterback, might be Derek Carr. You have a good framework around you. It's not the worst team. So I think Indy has a good chance of bouncing back and potentially making the playoffs in a relatively weak division. The other one is Houston. I know Matthew West said why is the worst not Houston, for the reason of what Verderame said. You're getting the second overall draft pick. You will not have high expectations, and I think they're finally going to dive in and give this next guy a chance. I think they'll finally say, all right, we're not going to keep going this 1 year carousel. Whoever is next, if they get the guy they want, will get 4+ years. They'll have time to develop that number 2 overall draft pick, the quarterback. They have cap space. I would say Houston, you might have low expectations and a longer leash, even though we've not seen that over the past couple of seasons.
Fair. I can hear that.
Let's get into the future. Number 3, top seed with better hopes of reaching the Super Bowl, Eagles or Kansas City Chiefs?
I think I wrote down Chiefs. I went back and forth on this. I think you actually, when you think about it, like, I would say the Chiefs, but you can really argue this. Like, the reason I would say the Chiefs is simple. They have the best player in the world. And that guy has been there and done it. Like, he's just over and over. He's gone to the Super Bowl twice. He's won one of them. I mean, he's never lost a playoff game in the AFC side of things. I mean, obviously the Super Bowl. Never lost an AFC playoff game that wasn't in overtime. Like, I'm worried about the Eagles health-wise with Lane Johnson. I'm worried about Jalen Hurts. Defensively, I don't know. Like, they haven't been tested against a lot of good quarterbacks this year, or the Chiefs have been. The Eagles probably have the easier path. So that's the case for the Eagles. I think the Chiefs are the better team. So that would be the case for the Chiefs. I will take the Chiefs, but I will admit up front, I think that is a razor's edge in either direction.
I think the Eagles have an easier path just because of the division. The AFC is much, much more difficult. Look at the NFC and the quarterbacks you're going up against. Brock Purdy is your biggest test because they're on the 49ers. Geno Smith, if they were to win, Danny Dimes, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, or a 45-year-old Tom Brady.
Right. I get it.
I think the Eagles have a much easier path. They, in my mind, have an easier path, so I would go with him. I think Jalen Hurts is fine. I think the injury concerns, while they are there, he seems healthy. They're going to have a bye. The Eagles were incredible all season long with him at quarterback.
And they'll play at home the whole way.
They'll play at home.
There's a lot of – I just came down on – I don't know if they're healthy, and Mahomes is just so ridiculous that it's like I'll just take him. I'm basically just taking him and being like, I just think they'll just find a way.
I think the Chiefs are the better team. I think the Chiefs are the better team. I'm not arguing you there. I just think that the path. I mean, hell, Jacksonville might be – Trevor Lawrence might be the best quarterback in that entire division if you were to go over there. And he's what? The 5th best one? in the AFC right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you. It's a fair point.
Let's get into the future. Number 4, who should win Coach of the Year?
I think Sirianni should. I think Nick Sirianni should. Dable's got a great case. Doug Peterson's got a good case. Back-to-back number 1 overall picks. Now you won the division. You're in the playoffs. I think Kevin O'Connell did a hell of a job. 13-4. I don't care what you say about the Vikings. Like, they're 13-4, and he's a rookie head coach. That's a hell of a job. But I think Sirianni, like, the Eagles were expected to be good. I don't think anybody thought they'd be this good. I think Nick Sirianni, and by the way, Tomlin deserves a shout out too. That team going 9-8, it's unbelievable. But I would say that Sirianni deserves the award this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of coaches that exceeded expectations this season. Kevin O'Connell, like you mentioned, Brian Daboll, like you mentioned, Mike Tomlin, like you mentioned. I think Pete Carroll, obviously taking a Geno Smith-led Seahawks team to the playoffs, what we thought was going to be horrendous. I think that deserves a mention, but it has to be Nick Sirianni. He most exceeded expectations, in my opinion. Dan Campbell, right? But they didn't make the playoffs. Doug Peterson, I've been wanting to try and get more and more hype surrounding his Coach of the Year candidacy, but he seems like a second-place finish. I also want to give a shout-out, Andy Reid. Andy Reid went 14-3. You never hear it from coaches who were expected to be good, but no one expected the Chiefs to be 14-3 in the 1 seed. No one expected them to have the offense be where it's at with losing Tyreek Hill. Andy Reid, he's not going to win Coach of the Year because, again, expectations were already high, but at some point that guy needs a shout out. 14-3 with what he's done, that deserves at least some sort of credit in my book.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Let's wrap her up. What's going on in your life? What's going on in your world?
You want to be humbled? Run a suicide. You want to be humbled? Run a suicide. I'm trying to get back into basketball again because I'm not going to go easy into the good night. I feel like I still have some game left in me. League starts back up January 25th, I think, is the first game. And I'm trying to get back in shape. So I ran a suicide, and fuck me, that was horrendous.
You ran one of them?
Well, I already played a lot of basketball beforehand, and I had blisters on my feet because I'm an asshole. I didn't, I'm trying to get back into shape, and it was horrible. I ran a suicide after playing basketball, and yeah, I thought I was going to puke. It was horrendous.
So for the people out there, can you just lay out what a suicide is? I mean, I know.
Yeah. When you're playing, go to basketball court, you run, baseline, free throw line, baseline, half court, baseline, other free throw line, baseline, full court, and back. You think, oh, that's easy, right? Yeah, it was when you were 17.
I've been there, man. I've been there. Let me tell you something. I've run them in basketball. I played JV. I just kind of screwing around. I was not good at basketball. All I could do was shoot. I could shoot. I could not. I can't jump more than 6 inches off the ground. But if you gave me the ball from outside, that was about all I was good for. But the reason I bring this up is, I will tell you the hardest ones I've ever done. Hockey. When you've got to that's like getting a car going and then you stop. You get the car going. Oh my God, that is brutal. Blue line back, red line back, far blue line back, all the way down to back. And I remember there was a practice I had my junior year, I think it was, maybe my senior year, regardless on the varsity team at this point. And our coach loved the man to death, but no nonsense. Brooklyn, just very much like that's who he was. And so he's explaining a drill that we're about to run. We're getting ready to run our power play units. And one of my teammates, who's a buddy of mine, just won't stop talking to one of my other buddies. And he finally, the coach just looked, he's like, you know what? Fine, you won't shut the fuck up. Get on the line. All of you. I don't care. Just get on the line. We did those suicides. He's like, we're going to go until somebody throws up, which now, forget it. Parents would be out there with lawyers. But at the time, we did it. And poetically, my buddy who wouldn't shut up was the one who threw up on about the 8th one. And I remember he went down to one knee just in his own vomit. And our coach was like, just leave him there. Leave him in the corner to think about what he's done. And after that, I can't look at a suicide without getting visibly ill. This is all I can think of. They are terrible. They will change your life.
Yeah, it's
So
horrible.
I feel for you. I also feel for your blistered feet. That
Yeah,
sounds
they're brutal, man. I am again, when you hit a certain age trying to get back in shape, you think it's easy. Like, oh, I did this when I was 17, and you go, that's over a decade ago. Yeah, yeah.
well, also in a we didn't even do this on purpose, but also in a fitness goal. I have always hated running my entire life. I just had, even when I was in high school and I was practicing sports every day and was in good cardio shape, and I've hated running. I will bike, I will skate, I will do whatever you want. Anything you want. I'll bike as long as you want to go. But man, if it's running, it's boring to me.
I'm with you.
I don't like it, right? But it annoys me deep down in my soul that like everybody I know, they're like, yeah, run the 5K, run the half marathon. I'm like, fuck, man, I can't do that. And if there's something about me that is definitely true, if I can't do it, it drives me crazy. Like I'm like, I have to do it. I will prove to myself that I can. I don't care if I prove it to anybody else, but to me, like I have to prove it to me that I can do it. So my goal this year is to run a 5K. And I'm not talking about New Year resolutions bullshit. Like when I go to the gym, typically it's the weight lift. So I was like, I'm gonna go to the treadmill and I'm gonna put up the elevation so I kind of get a realistic idea of the actual run. And it was funny because I go over there and I'm 6'2", like 240. Okay. You've met me. Like I'm not a small person. And I go over there and it's all these like skin flint people running on treadmills. And then it's me. Like, I might not be made to do this. This could be a problem. Ran a mile, felt fine doing it. I was actually quite honestly surprised. Then went on the elliptical and just burnt off another couple hundred calories and went home. My goal is by the end of the next week is to be at 2 miles. And then we'll just build up. My goal is to get myself to where I can run 5 miles in a shot. And that way a 5K is peanuts because it's only 3.1. That's the goal. My wife's run half marathons. Her family, they run marathons for fun. Like, they're like, you want to just run the Chicago Marathon? Yeah, what the hell? Go down there and run. Like, that's never happening. Okay. But I want to be able to run a 5K so that the next time I'm hanging out with a bunch of people eating kale and they're like, I'm going to run a 5K. I'm like, oh, I too have run a 5K. Fuck you and your 5K. Like, the only reason I want to do it is so I have
No one
my
does that with a 5K though. It's always half marathon or full. No
I've
one's
been around
like,
plenty of
no
people
one
that do it.
is like, yeah, dude, I ran a 5K. Fuck you, pal.
I've been
Oh,
around
come
plenty
on.
I've been around plenty of people who do that. And let me tell you, look, I am not going to be the person who brings it up, but if I'm sitting next to somebody who's like, yeah, my wife and I are going to run a 5K next week, and be fuck you. I ran a 5K last week. How's that?
Hey,
I want that in my bag. I want that in my arsenal.
look up 5Ks around when you and I are going to the Blink 182 concert in Chicago.
Oh,
If that's the same weekend, I will run a 5K with you, and that'll be our pregame. That'll be our way of warming up to all the booze that we will
we could
consume.
run. You know what we should do? We should map out 3.1 miles to a bar near the United Center
Yes.
and just be like, look, we're going to run 2 5Ks today. The first one before we go drinking. The second one, which is going to feel like a marathon afterward. I'm all for it, man. Have you ever run a 5? Not to be that guy, but
I have ran one. I ran one when I was like 12, and me and my mom's side of the family, she has a very large side of the family. We all went out to Jersey, actually, to a small town. At the time, my uncle was the mayor, and they were hosting some 5K, and our family won like every single age. We had like an 85-year-old run, 60-year-old, 50-year-old, 40-year-old. And I think I won my age bracket at age like 9 or 12, whatever I was. It was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, I've debated, like, should I drink a beer while I run this? Like, should I just be like, you know what, I'm going out with, and like not like pouring it in a water bottle either.
No,
like,
you know how they hand you cups of water
yeah.
when you're running. Just give me a Casey Beer Co. Give me a Pils Light.
Yeah, just give me like give me like a 40 of Ice House, and I just run with it. Like, I feel like that'd be great because people would be like, there he goes, there's the everyman. Like, all these other
Fucking 40
people.
of old English
Yeah,
just
yeah,
dousing
like
yourself.
everybody. You ever play 40 scissor hands in college? Where they tape them to your hands? Yeah, maybe I'll just do that. Like, I'll just, let's see what happens first. I die, I finish the 40 hands, or I do the 5K.
You
Look,
chip 3 teeth because you're trying to drink it as you're running. It's glass bottles.
let me
Just
tell you, by the way, we can end on this note. So when I first started in this business, okay, before I was covering the National Football League, I was covering anything and everything in Binghamton, New York. I was 22 years old. And when I say anything and everything, I mean it. Anything. So the two events I always think about that I covered that I'm like, man, thank God the career progressed a little bit. First one was I was asked to go to a bowling alley at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to cover a tournament. You've never seen so many people that drunk at 10 a.m. in your life. I mean, just plastered drunk, right? Okay, that was an experience. Smoking like crazy, signs everywhere. Like, it's not prohibited. No, you fuck that. Okay. Secondly, I covered a run, and I cannot remember for the life of me if it was a 5K or a half or whatever it was. It was a race. And a woman won, couldn't tell you her name, doesn't matter. Comes across the finish line. I'm sitting there, right? I'm waiting for hours. It probably was like a half marathon. I'm sitting there. She comes up to me. She knows I'm an interviewer. I'm like, hey, listen, I got 4 or 5 questions. I'm going to write a couple of graphs on this for the paper. I'm talking to her, and I guess she could tell you. I'm like, what? Like something doesn't smell right. Something's off, right? Like what? And we finished the interview, and I'm being respectful. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. She just goes, is it obvious? I'm like, what? She's like, shit myself. I'm like, all right, then, see you. Like, apparently, and I went back and I was like, the newsroom's gonna love this, and told this story, and they're like, yeah, bro, people shit themselves all the time when they run. And I was like, what? And
what?
I know. Yes. Apparently this just happens. People just don't want to stop, just whatever. And
The chafing.
I
That has to be worse.
I couldn't even look her in the eye. I was like, okay, that's great. See you. Thanks, ma'am. Good night. Yep. I'll tell you right now, that'll motivate you to do good in your career. Okay? Yeah.
Did you post that though in the newspaper? Did you say, you asked a question that goes, lady who shit
Jane
herself.
Doe, 42, lost control of her bowels over on Route 76 between miles 2 and 4. No, I did not. But I just remember being like, this is rancid. What is happening? And apparently that just happens all the time.
Oh.
I mean, apparently just all the time. Like, not an uncommon thing. And I was floored by that.
Like, wow. I have to look at all of my running friends differently now. I have a good amount of friends who
know that they've lost control of themselves on the track.
I will text them and say, have any of you fellas shit your britches whilst running said marathon?
It was unbelievable. There was no shame at all about it. It's just, yeah, and I'm like, I think she expected me, apparently, maybe to be a seasoned reporter or writer and be like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, I was just like, oh. Like, I just was so taken aback by the whole thing.
It's like the George Brett just nonchalant, hey, fellas, shit myself last night. That's like the all-time quote just from George Brett. Yeah.
It was deeply concerning. All right. We're an hour 15. Well, always good to leave on that note. Listen, Sterling Holmes, I am Matt Verderam. Thank you so much for listening to Stacking the Box. We will be back next week to preview the divisional round and to talk about all things wild card round. Until then, if your team's involved this weekend, good luck. If they're not, well, either hopefully you're a Chiefs or an Eagles fan or you're getting ready for some mock drafts. But hey, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.